Hello, everyone, or anyone. Gordon Causey here. We got Candy. She wants a treat. Come up and say hi. People like dogs. There you go. Good. I see I have one person watching. Good evening. Thanks for watching my video. It's now 2:20 a.m. on Saturday, very early Saturday morning here in the Eastern Time Zone. I'm in southeastern Ontario, Canada. Bit of a runny nose. Gordon Causey, Gordy Canuck, grow a set, pick whatever. And disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about the Ohio train derailment. And I am not an expert in any scientific discipline. So these are just the thoughts, views, and opinions of one man. Fact check everything, verify anything. This is not being put out to offer advice. For advice, go to recognized government officials and agencies or whatever. And of course, as always, you're welcome to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. So how did I titled this one? It play on the theme of if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make any sound. Well, if the news doesn't report on something, did it really happen? And I was amazed today when I was at work. Before I get going, chat is on, so comments, chat is appreciated. I enjoy engagement. I was amazed today at work, having a conversation, and I brought up the Ohio train derailment, and I was amazed to have a couple people say to me they weren't even aware of this event. Had no idea that this had occurred. I then asked, are you familiar? Did you hear about the UFOs? Oh yeah, I heard about the UFOs. But a train derailment? Toxic chemicals spill, burning off of vinyl chloride into the atmosphere, poisoning of groundwater and the Ohio River, which feeds into the Mississippi. No, I didn't know about that. And some are suggesting that this is an orchestrated event. Klaus Schwab was just addressing something called the World Government Summit, which is shocking. I wasn't even aware of the fact that there was a World Government Summit, having a summit for something that I didn't even think existed, a world government. Thought there were world governments, a government in the United States, a government in Canada, a government in England, sovereign states with their own governments. But Klaus Schwab was addressing the world government, singular. And in his address, part of which he talked about how the world will be facing multiple, what he referred to as black swan events. I'd heard the term black swan event before, white swan event, black swan event, but only in reference to the capital markets. If it was announced that the chief financial officer for a major multinational corporation had just embezzled $1 billion, that would be a black swan event. A white swan event, conversely, would be great news that a company's revenue had tripled over the previous year. And what Klaus Schwab was saying was we can expect more and more of these black swan events. And there are individuals who are suggesting, not me, that the Ohio train derailment was an orchestrated event. And curiously, if you haven't heard, I think anyone watching this channel, my video, will know what happened. East Palestine, East Palestine, Ohio, just on the very outskirts, right on the edge of town. There was a train derailment, 50 odd cars, a number of which contained a chemical called vinyl chloride and other toxic chemicals, went off the rails, and they engaged in what they referred to as a controlled burn, fearful that the pressurized vinyl chloride might explode. They basically, I guess, opened a valve, let it leak out, and then burned it off into the atmosphere. And it's also poisoned, apparently, the ground in the area. Or I shouldn't say poisoned. I'm not an expert, but it was released into the ground and burned off into the air. And it's even in the mainstream, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, they're reporting on the fact that I don't know how they count. They're saying something like 30,000 dead fish. Someone going around. I know it's done by. I know they have a system by which they estimate, but counting dead fish. And I want you to imagine you live in the town of East Palestine, because even CNN has reported on this, and that's actually, it was their article that brought it to my attention. Netflix filmed a movie in 2021 called White Noise, and it was filmed in various locations. I think Cleveland was one. Also, though, East Palestine. East Palestine was the location chosen to film the evacuation scene. In the movie, a train derailment causes an airborne toxic cloud an airborne toxic cloud is created, and the residents of a small town are forced to evacuate. And residents in East Palestine, many of them, some, I don't know how many, were engaged as extras in this movie for this evacuation and then later return. And again, that was filmed in 2021. So I want you to imagine yourself being from East Palestine, I keep doing that, from East Palestine, Ohio, and being an extra, or everyone in town. I think it's a town of 5,000 to 6,000 people. Everyone in town, 99.9% were, I'm sure, aware that there was this Netflix movie being filmed in their little sleepy little Ohio town. And then, so in 2021, the filming takes place. And then in 2022, the movie is released. From what I've read, it was released, a limited release in theaters and also on Netflix. So I'm pretty darn certain that probably 99.9, darn near 100% of the people of East Palestine, Ohio, watched that movie. If, my little tiny sleepy town in southeastern Ontario, if we were in a movie, if there was filming going on here, whether I was an extra in the movie or not, I'd watch it. Oh, there's my house. There's my workplace. There's my school. It's what people do. So that was 2021, filmed. 2022, everyone in that town watches it. And then in 2023, on February 3rd, it actually happens. And exactly what happened in the movie that some residents participated in and then watched on TV, now they got to live it for real. That's just too coincidental for a lot of people. Not me. Yeah, right. But even more telling, in my mind, is the fact that the CDC publishes toxicological profiles for various toxins, for various chemicals, one of which is vinyl chloride. And they updated their profile on vinyl chloride just a couple weeks before the tragic event happened in East Palestine. Just before that, the so-called controlled burn of vinyl chloride into the atmosphere, and the release of this chemical into the water and ground, they updated their profile on vinyl chloride. And prior to January of 2023, it was considered toxic. The threshold, I'll refer to it as a safety threshold, 100 parts per million was considered. Anything above that, if you're south of 100 parts per million, you're okay. Anything 100 parts per million or over, now some are describing it as lethal. Vinyl chloride is a known carcinogen, causes all manner of heart, or no, I don't know if it damages the heart or not, probably, but I do know the liver. It's very carcinogenic. Leukemias, lymphomas, which can be, don't kill you like that, but over time, and maybe not a lot of time. So this is freaky. This is freaky stuff. Anyway, they updated their profile, but instead of 100 parts per million, they raised the safety or the threshold to 100,000 parts per million. You can check that out yourself on the CDC toxicology reports. Just Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever your search, whatever you like to use. Would love, there is someone watching, at least that's what YouTube says. If you want to say hi, please do. If it's Stephen over in Ireland, I can get my Irish accent on. There is things circulating over, there are images circulating over social media sites like Twitter and Facebook of a screen capture, what is purported to be an atmospheric radar satellite type imagery showing dispersal. And it's a little unsettling because it's getting to my area. And if vinyl chloride is dangerous at levels of 100,000 parts per million, well, 100,000 over a million, that's 10%. It's a very, you can have tons of this stuff, and if it's less than 10%, it's 9.5%. If it's 8.5%, it's okay. Whereas earlier reports had it toxic at 1,000 times. It's a huge factor. We can put 1,000 times as much into the air, soil, water now than what the advice was before. So that's freaky. And there's a alternative media site. This is called greenlivingtribe.com. And they had an article. I'll invite you to search it out yourself. If you're watching a video, you know how to use the internet. This is media pushes eyes to the sky while 7 biohazardous spills, leaks, explosions in less than 30 days ignored. And I had heard that there were 3 train derailments, but I didn't know the details on any of them aside from the one in East Palestine, Ontario. I did it again, East Palestine, Ohio. So number 1 is Louisiana evacuation order after biohazardous train derailment. Here's what it says: approximately 4 square miles of a northwestern Louisiana community was evacuated following a train derailment involving hazardous materials on January 27th, 2023. The incident occurred on the Union Pacific Railroad tracks at Keechee, about 80 miles north of Jasper. According to the DeSoto Parish Sheriff's Department, They were dealing with a spill and leak involving approximately 10,000 gallons of acetic anhydride, which is fatal if inhaled, and approximately 1,000 gallons of propionic acid, which can cause injuries if inhaled or contact skin. Then, of course, number 2, East Palestine, train derailment sparks concerns over water. And I've just talked about that, so I'll skip over it. And then that was number 3 is Texas authorities issue shelter in place in Katy, Texas, due to biohazardous leak. Authorities have issued a shelter in place for parts of Katy, Texas, in response to a hazmat leak as of February 12th. Now we're only going back 6 days. Officials reported the incident began at a 99-cent only store warehouse and have advised that the leak contains anhydrous ammonia material that poses an explosive and toxic risk. The cause of the incident is unknown. No casualties reported. Number 4, now we're into Arizona. Arizona authorities issue order to evacuate, take shelter after biohazardous spill. A portion of an Arizona freeway was closed in both directions on February 14th as a result of a crash and hazmat spill, authorities said. The State Department of Public Safety said the closure on Interstate 10 was extensive and urged motorists to avoid the area. A commercial truck tanker rolled over on the freeway, causing the spill, authorities said. Pima County officials stated that the dangerous substance was nitric acid. Nitric acid is a highly corrosive chemical used in manufacturing and fertilizer. Several areas were evacuated. Authorities have not said if there is any danger to the public. Number 5, a freight train carrying toxic materials derailed in Van Buren Township. 6 cars came off the tracks near Detroit, Michigan on February 16th. One of the cars is believed to contain hazardous substances, but thankfully there were no signs that it was leaking or that there was a danger to the public. Officials are investigating the cause of the crash. This derailment in Michigan happens only 2 weeks after the Ohio train derailment involving the same train company, Norfolk Southern. The rail operator has been under scrutiny for its response to the Ohio derailment. Several lawsuits have been filed against Norfolk Southern, alleging negligence, and residents exposed to the dangerous chemicals from the derailment have voiced safety concerns. Number 6, Oklahoma. Tank fire sparks yet another chemical incident. A chemical fire at a storage tanker in an Oklahoma port is the latest in a string of incidents across the United States in just a few days. Just before 9 a.m. on February 14th, firefighters were alerted to the fire at the port of Cartusa, north of Tulsa. The port was evacuated and an emergency shelter order was issued to local residents. It's unclear what caused the fire and if it was toxic. Port officials told media they weren't sure what the tanker contained, but firefighters confirmed the tank was thankfully empty. And the last one, raging 5-acre Florida fire burns biohazardous fumes outside nursery plant warehouse. Firefighters are responding to a massive industrial fire in Kissimmee, Florida. Osceola County fire rescue officials said they responded to a call that came in around 2 a.m. on February 16 about a fire behind a nursery supplies manufacturing plant. Officials said about 2 acres of pallets that had plastic planters on them were set on fire before spreading into a 5-acre inferno. The plant itself did not catch fire. Once the fire is out, it will take several hours to overhaul the area and deal with a large mess of melted plastic, the fire department said. Fire officials said they are monitoring the air quality because of the large plumes of smoke potentially containing hazardous chemicals from the burning plastic. Hazmat and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection are on the scene and reporting no release of hazardous materials at this time. those watching my video will probably be aware of the fact that, for a number of weeks, maybe a couple, 3 months, or maybe even longer, there were a number of food processing type plants, facilities that were suddenly catching fire. You'll remember, I think it was in Kansas City, Missouri, that a large number head of cattle were said to have just dropped dead suddenly from heat, something I've never heard of before. It's when I was growing up in the 1970s in New Jersey. We used to, I remember the summers could get incredibly hot, 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit, talking in the neighborhood of 40 degrees Celsius, and never heard about animals just dropping dead, cattle. So much going on. And as I said at the beginning, Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, the false industrial revolution, which I refer to as the Fourth Reich. You need black swan events to usher in change. If absent a crisis, things tend to just muddle along the way they have. If you want to affect change, a crisis is a great way to do it. And if a crisis doesn't happen organically, and even if it does, all the better if it's a planned crisis, because then you can have your responses, you can have your messaging, you can have everything prepared in advance. And, if you look back historically, the term false flag gets bandied about. And I don't think it's an entirely accurate description. A false flag, at its core, it's deception. It's a deceptive maneuver designed to result in a certain response. But typically a false flag involves, two opposing forces, armies, if you will. And what one side will do is they'll attack themselves and try and make it look like the enemy did it. That's what a false flag operation is at its core. It's where you attack yourself. And so, strictly speaking, if as some conspiracy theorists are suggesting, that the Ohio train derailment, to use that example, that it was an orchestrated event in a fashion, false flag fits, but who's the opposing force? You've got to go down conspiratorial rabbit holes to see it in this fashion. I'll give you a classic example, though, of a false flag operation. It's what set the wheels in motion for World War II. World War II, Hitler, everyone knows, had written a book called Mein Kampf. And I forget the exact term in Germany used, but he said that Germany needed Lederschoben or something. I forget the word, but in English, elbow room. We need elbow room where, however many, 70, 80 million people, and we're too constrained. We need to expand. And his move in the book, he wanted to move east, not west. He didn't want to go France, Great Britain, Spain later. He wanted to go east initially. And everyone knows that the event that triggered World War II, it set the dominoes falling on the alliances, was Poland was aligned with Great Britain, and Great Britain was aligned with France. So when the Nazis invaded Poland, it resulted in England, and of course Candy now has to go playing with a noisy toy. I don't think she knows how to use a yo-yo. That's what that is. Get down. Get down. I gave you your go lay down. Anyway, was talking about the start of World War II. The Germans were attacked. A radio station on the Polish-German border was attacked, and the attackers were soldiers in Polish uniforms. And so the news went out that Germany was under attack by Polish uniformed soldiers. And I'm going to, the Germans are no different from any other population. They're not going to attack meaninglessly another country. There had to be a reason, there had to be a pretext. And the pretext was that radio station on the Polish-German border had been attacked. This is one of these little incidents in history that doesn't get a lot of reporting, that isn't taught widely. And so the good German people supported the invasion of Poland. Germany wasn't attacking Poland, it was defending itself. And if anyone dared to suggest that, well, how do we know it was Polish soldiers just because they were in Polish uniforms? That individual would be a threat to the safety and security of the good German people. The government is keeping us safe and secure. How dare you question the government? And the only reason we know that that was a false flag attack on that radio station is because the Nazis lost the war. Had they won, I imagine that that event, I guess it would have happened in August or September of 1939. I would imagine it would be commemorated as a great, as an event when the Polish army, Polish soldiers attacked a German radio station on the German-Polish border. As I say, it was not Polish soldiers; it was German soldiers dressed in Polish uniforms, designed to elicit a response, and the desired response was elicited. Germany went to war. The dominoes started to fall in the alliances, and the next thing you know, the world is engulfed in war, and Germany, Nazi Germany, was marching toward its goal of world domination, one world government, eugenics, selective breeding, and God knows what the world would be like today if the Western powers hadn't won that war, and Russia. Russia doesn't get enough credit for breaking the back of the German war machine. They paid an exponentially higher toll than any other country in the world. They broke the back of the German army. But you can go back to World War I, and what started World War I? It was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. Forget his first name, Lorenzo or something, I forget, doesn't matter. Archduke Ferdinand was the heir apparent to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which included Germany. And he was assassinated by a Serbian. And that was the event that started the dominoes falling. A month after that event, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they declared war on Serbia, and then Serbia declared war, and the dominoes start falling. Many historians, and I would argue most historians, viewed that war as inevitable. It was just a question of what would be. Everything was put in place. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire, the British Empire, the French Empire, the Russian Empire, all these empires had been building up toward war, and now they've been militarizing, they've been forming alliances, and now they just need an event to trigger it. And further evidence that was an orchestrated event is the fact that Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophia survived the very same day that he was assassinated. Earlier, just a few hours prior to that, he survived an assassination attempt. And when that failed, then a second assassination attempt succeeded. Sounds to me like a contingency plan. Okay, well, if he fails, then your turn. And if that one fails, your turn. But we're getting this war going. And another little tidbit that's never really taught in history class is that, we're talking about 1914 here. The biggest change in the world at that time was the emergence of the automobile, and for the first time in history, the commodity of oil had become a major world resource, extremely important. Geopolitics showed us that most of the world at that time, most of the world's proven oil reserves were in an area, the Middle East. The Middle East was controlled by the Ottoman, or sometimes called the Turkish Empire. And the Ottomans had been seeking a dance partner. Everyone knew that war was coming, and the Ottomans were seeking alliances as well, but they were rebuffed by the French, by the British, by the Western powers, rebuffed them. They wouldn't form an alliance with them. And the Ottomans were left to choose between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire. And from what I've read, the Ottomans, the Turks, didn't trust the Russians. They thought the Russians would come in, and rather than be allies, they would basically try to take them over. So ultimately, about a month into the war, the Ottomans knew that they were going to be attacked, so they needed a dance partner, and they signed on with the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Germans, what we typically refer to as the Germans. And as everyone knows, of course, the Western powers won that war. And now the Middle East and all those proven oil reserves came under control of the Western powers and could be exploited. And they went about and they set up countries. They basically drew up boundaries and borders of the old Ottoman Empire, creating countries, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, what have you. And the French, who hadn't done too well in World War I, they were given like Algeria and Morocco. You can have these parts, which didn't have much in the way of oil. The Western powers, the Brits, they took more control of the areas that had proven oil reserves. And one thing they did was they established royal families to rule over the local populations. And the Islamic faith is divided broadly into the Sunni and the Shia. Those are the two main branches of Islam. And so if an area that they established, they would say, okay, what's the majority population? If the majority population was Sunni, the royal family would be Shia. Likewise, if the majority population was Shia, then it would be a Sunni royal family. The old analogy of a house divided against itself. It's similar in fashion, Sunni and Shia. To a degree, it's kind of like Protestantism and Catholicism. Same religion, different denominations, if you will, that historically, even though they share a common faith, don't get along. And I don't understand a lot of it. I don't understand. I know a bit about Islam. I know the pillars and what have you, but I don't. I know it had something to do with line of succession and who do you follow? Do you follow Muhammad's heirs or do you follow others? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But false flags, deception are de rigueur in war. And right now, it's not a classic war. It's not war in the classical sense of opposing armies going at each other. Instead, it's a battle for the hearts, minds, soul. I would say even the soul of humanity, simply because we've heard from the World Economic Forum. We've heard from Klaus Schwab, from his right-hand man, his top advisor, and Yuval Noah Harari, how they regard humanity as being a hackable animal. And I've said it before, I'll repeat it again. The ultimate goal is to have the vast majority of the human population, whatever is left when things are said and done, to have the vast majority as little more than digital property of the so-called masters of, the self-appointed owners of the world, basically corporate ownership of the world, with the government there just basically to hold the population's leash and do the beck and call, at the beck and call of their corporate masters. So in terms of the Ohio train derailment and this toxic cloud, I would invite you to read up on the toxicology pre-January 2023, when they just updated it. How toxic is this chemical? How dangerous is it? I saw a video with a gentleman claiming to be basically a chemist type individual, who claimed that, he presents himself as having the education, and he talked about vinyl chloride as being incredibly toxic. And I think he was talking about 1 part per million as being dangerous, let alone 100 parts per million or 100,000 parts per million. Just 1 part. This is what he was saying. I don't know whether he's right or wrong. I don't have the right educational background. I just like hearing all the information, not just that which is approved by individuals who I don't trust, by agencies that I do not trust. Trust is going away in today's world. And if you can't trust, trust is at the foundation of our world. When we go to the grocery store and we buy food, we trust that the government agencies overseeing food manufacturing, food processing, food delivery, that they have my family's best interests at heart, that they can't be bought out. And I'll end this off by once again recommending, in terms of the COVID era, I will strongly recommend you subscribe to Dr. John Campbell's YouTube channel, because one of the things he's highlighting is how we have the foxes watching the hen house, how much of regulatory agencies in terms of the pharmaceutical industry, how much the regulatory agencies are beholden to the pharmaceutical industry itself, because a large portion of their funding, depending on which agency, whether it's the FDA, the EMA, Australia Health Canada, whatever, that these regulatory agencies get so much of their funding, 50, 60, 70, 80%, depends on the agency, from the pharmaceutical industry itself. Many have said, if you want to follow the science, you have to follow the money. And who's paying for the regulation? Talk about a conflict of interest. Are you going to bite the hand that feeds you? The foxes are never going to blame the foxes for all the chickens dying. It's always going to be another reason. So that's the end of my video. It'll be 40 odd minutes. Again, you're welcome to like, subscribe, and share, and do all that stuff. Can't believe I'm at 90. I think I'm at 94 subscribers now. Unreal. But maybe my voice, I'm a pipsqueak of a voice, but every little bit helps. So talk about this. Don't just share it on social media. Don't just tweet about it. Talk about it when you're at work, when you're downtown chatting with someone you bump into on the street. These are the things we need to be talking about. Forget the UFOs, forget the Grammys, forget the NHL, NFL, Major League Baseball, whatever. Talk about things that are important. So God bless, and we'll talk to you later. And